Hey guys, alright, so I'm going to follow up with what we talked about in class today actually, which is going to be colorizing a black and white photograph. Now, I've got one here. This is by photojournalist Dorothea Lange. This is of course The Migrant Mother. It came out during kind of the Dust Bowl time period in history. Really famous picture. Actually, the woman's name is Florence Owens Thompson. This picture was taken in 1936. It's pretty old, but it is very influential, and obviously for obvious reasons there is a lot of emotion going on in this photo, but it is black and white. So back in the day, what they used to do, way back as far as early photography, back when they did a type of photo called daguerreotype, where you would actually print onto a photosensitive metal, they would go through and they would have these black and white photos, and they'd start to hand color them using different techniques like watercolors or crayons or pastels or even just dyes, certain kinds of ink. Would allow you to kind of smear it in using your fingers or a paintbrush or something, kind of grind it into that photo, and that kind of gave it a very distinctive look. So we're going to mimic that look using GIMP and Photoshop here. It's a really simple process. It's just a little time consuming to get it as nice as you want it to be. So what we're going to do is this very quickly. I've got my photo all loaded up. I'm going to make a brand new layer. That's stuff that you guys already know how to do. There we go. Now if you wanted to, if you were so inclined, you could always make a brand new layer and actually have the layer colored. So you could have that ahead of time if you were interested. But again, I'm going to stick with transparency for right now. I like a little more control. I'm going to grab the color that I want. So for example, I'm going to do her skin. So I want to find a good skin color. Again, start over here. Let's see, kind of more in the yellows, maybe in the oranges there. And then kind of drop this down a little more pale. About there. That looks like a kind of sand-blasted, leathery skin. Then I'm going to switch up my brush a little bit, and again, get a brush that you feel comfortable with, good kind of fuzzy edge to it, good scale, something that you're happy with. Okay. Now, think of this kind of like how you used a layer mask. In fact, we're going to use a layer mask in a little bit, but for right now, I'm just going to show you the basics. Okay. So what I would normally do is go through and actually add a layer mask and start adding color back and forth. But for the sake of the demo here, I'm just going to start painting right over top of where I think her skin should be, and get it everywhere. Even there's a little crack right there in her hair. Now again, if this was on a layer mask, I could go through very easily and kind of mask out her eyes, mask out her hair. I could do everything in advance, and that's definitely something that I want you to be able to do. But for the sake of this demo, I want it to go quickly, so I'm just going to paint the living crap out of her face, even get her hand in there. Now I'm not too worried about getting in the fine details again. I would layer mask this and erase it and keep it all nice and clean, but it's basically ready to go. Okay, very simple. I'm going to introduce you to this stuff right here. This is called our layer mode. And your layer mode is going to allow you to do different aspects and different things to the layer itself. So for example, right now I've got my picture, it's got this paint over top, but what I want to do is I want to pull through that black and white, and basically anything that's white I want to push back. So this color shows through the white, but doesn't really show through the black. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to use a technique over here, a layer mode called overlay. And by clicking on that, voila, nice and pushed in the back. Basically anything that's white now is this kind of tannish color. Anything that's black is popping through just fine. Now, on its own, you should feel relatively comfortable, and definitely it feels a little washed out right now because everything else is so black and white. But if I wanted to, I could actually go through, maybe get a darker shade, add a new layer. And I could start, maybe I want more shadow on this side of her face. You shouldn't really need to do this because, again, that black and white photo is showing through. So where there is shadow, there already is shadow, if that makes sense. But again, for the sake of argument, let's amp it up a little bit. I'll do the same thing, layer mode, overlay, and now I'm showing through. That's a little too much, actually. She looks like she's sunburned, but you get the general idea. Again, I could go through with my layer mask and start to clean this thing up a little bit, get rid of these weird blurry edges and everything. I'm going to go through and do that for everything, and it's going to be really fun down here in her little checker pattern here because I want that to be red and white, and that's going to be a lot. But the most fun about doing a colored black and white photo is the fact that for most examples, especially if you're coming from a black and white photograph, I don't know what the actual person looked like. I don't know what color clothes they had. So I have to do a little bit of research on my end, actually go dig around on Wikipedia or wherever, and actually find, well, what was popular back then? What kind of fabrics were popular back in this time period? So it kind of allows you to be a little bit of a historian and maybe like a little bit of an archaeologist and discover what was the correct color as opposed to what color I want it to be. Feel free also as you're going along to experiment. Sometimes overlay doesn't do exactly what you want it to do. There are many layer modes there that I would encourage you to check out and play around with. Some are going to be really cool and some are going to mess it up totally. But that's the best part about working on the computer is you always have the undo button. Thanks. Hopefully that kind of loosens up things in your brain and jogs some memories from class. See you soon.